Bruce, thank you. We're still keeping a pretty good tight list here. Just want to make mention to you for March the 12th, we do have a special order of business. And to my knowledge, that's still on to have that discussion, but it is on March the 12th. And unless you have anything else, any members have anything we need to discuss, we'll get started hearing bills. Without any objection, then we will call on Senator Wallace. Senator Wallace, you're recognized for Senate Bill 145.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to have Chairman Ted Thomas sit alongside me here.
That'd be great, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, committee. This has been a long journey. We started this bill probably 7 weeks ago at our first meeting. That first meeting was a group of about 30 folks, angry on both sides. And over the last 6 weeks, under the guidance of Chairman Thomas, our groups have slowly come together. We're at the point where virtually everyone has agreed that they either like the bill or they will not oppose the bill. The ultimate winner in all of this is going to be the American or the Arkansas consumer that lives here in Arkansas. With that, I'll let Ted, if you will, sir, speak his part.
And this will be very brief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 145 puts the consumer first by embracing technology when the price is right and letting consumers determine when the price is right for them, while also ensuring that the value provided for one consumer isn't at the expense of another consumer, thus permitting Arkansas businesses and families to better manage the risk of higher utility bills from natural gas price fluctuation and possible federal carbon policy. So as a brief overview, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
All right. Members, do we have any questions? We have Senator Elliott first and Senator Johnson.
So I want to be clear about what we're voting on. Is this the same bill we had last time we were here and there was no movement, nothing else has happened as a result of that? Or is there some embedded amendment I'm missing?
It's embedded amendment.
Okay, can you just
yes.
Okay, well, I know what's in that, so thank you.
Senator Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Thomas, you had mentioned to me about setting the market up where market, in other words, the consumer would dictate how things work as opposed to the producers of electricity generation dictating how things are. Does this bill accomplish that purpose to the extent that it's within our meager abilities to do?
Yes, in my view it does. It preserves our regulated monopoly, but has areas of competition around the edges of it while preserving the core of the system that has served us well.
And if I may follow up, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you, Chairman Thomas and Senator Wallace and our chairman for the work that's done to get us to where we are. This was a textbook example of people coming together and ironing out a bill. So thank you very much. I look forward to voting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator.
Members, any other questions before we move to those speaking for and against? Senator, do you have anything else before we begin taking other testimony?
I just want to say that there were good men and women on both sides of this argument. They work together, and there's no one out there on the public utility side, the co-ops, that are going to oppose this bill. And I appreciate their efforts. Both sides gave a lot. And I'm closer.
Some gave off too, right? All right. With that, we'll move to testimony then. We thank you, Senator. You'll be allowed to close the bill, of course. I've got two people signed up to speak. I've got William Ball and Katie Niebaum. First on the list is speaking against is William Ball. If you're here, sir.
Finally.
If you would, sir, please punch the mic to turn that on, and then just state your name and who you represent for the record.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is William Ball. I've been self-unemployed in the solar business for a little over 40 years here in Arkansas. I'm also the original author of the Arkansas Renewable Energy Development Act of 2001. And I really, with a great deal of anguish that I've come to speak against this bill today, because I think as originally filed, it was a wonderful bill. ARETA, the Renewable Energy Development Act, has been amended several times since 2001, and in every case it's been an improvement, including Act 827 of 2015. Now comes Senate Bill 145, setting by statute how net metering should work. And members of the committee, I think you're being asked, after hearing a series of brief testimonies from both supporters and detractors, to vote on something that may subvert 3 years worth of work by parties and stakeholders that have been negotiating over at the PSC as a result of issues brought up by Act 827. We understand now that the Commission, after many months of struggling, has nearly 300-page order that will determine how net metering will work moving forward. The passing of this bill in its current form puts the legislature, after only a few hours of debate, in the position of overriding several years of deliberative and diligent work by the parties in the PSC. While undermining the work of the parties over the last few years should make us pause, the schemes used in this bill to do so evoke some concern to me. The proposed bill adds a definition of quantifiable benefits. The problem with the quantifiable benefit language is not what is included, but rather what it omits. The language in the definition of quantifiable benefits focuses on the monetary value to the utility and ignores benefits engrossed in ARETA, specifically leaving out that the PSC may authorize electric utilities to assess extra charges in balance against distribution system, environmental, and public policy benefits. In fact, the bill strikes language from Act 827 passed in 2015 that stipulates that any fees assessed be net of, without limitation, benefits to the electric utility's capacity, reliability, distribution system, or transmission system. Act 827 also goes on to stipulate that economic benefits must be considered. Allowing an increased generating capacity for net metering facilities would increase the state's ability to attract investment. We don't have economic benefits also in the quantifiable benefits. There have been comments suggesting that we should trust the PSC to do the right thing. Yet this bill directs the PSC to use avoided cost plus a sum to determine the rate. So it's more or less telling the PSC what to do, how to do it, and to set a rate that they must use to apply, while omitting these benefits that are not being considered. The language in the bill relating to energy storage devices are configured to they must be configured to receive energy or to be charged solely from the net metering facility. This is language that is derived from federal tax code requirements, so that storage might qualify for a tax incentive, not from any possible impact on net and excess generation or other factors associated with net metering. Hybrid net metering facilities with storage capacity are designed to only put energy on the grid when the storage is full, not to draw down storage for the sake of putting energy on the grid. Energy storage is designed to provide backup power in the event of a utility grid outage. Energy storage produces no power, it stores it. Hybrid inverters are designed to be able to use power from a customer's generator, that would not be a renewable source, to charge their batteries when the solar is not able to keep up. As an example, during an extended grid outage, due to an ice storm when there may be many days with virtually no sunny weather. I find the bill related to energy storage is unacceptable. I believe that claims of cost shifting to non-net metering customers are greatly exaggerated. Other states have reached 10% or more of their energy being produced from renewable energy with zero ratepayer impact. Just a few years ago, Arkansas had attained a level of 0.003%, and the only reason that we're now at 0.01% is because of the multi-megawatt facilities contracted by utilities. Senator Teague, more net metering in Arkansas will not make your grandmother's utility bill go up. However, SB 145 as amended will just about double the number of years it will take for that net metering facility to pay for itself. The primary goals of SB 145 have merit and they would be good for Arkansas. SB 145 as amended in its current form will not. I urge Senator Wallace to pull the bill and perfect it before a vote. Failing that, I urge the committee to vote against the bill as amended. Thank you.
Members, do you have any questions? Mr. Ball? Senator Elliott, you're recognized.
Mr. Ball, would you clarify for me, I just made this note about this bill not being good for economic development. Could you just encapsulate that in a few sentences so that I'm clear about what you're saying?
Actually, the bill would be good for economic development. I wouldn't deny that. But in the consideration of avoided costs plus this cap on the adder, economic development is not in the quantifiable benefits definition.
Okay.
So
That's what you were referring to?
That's
okay.
correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's it.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thanks for your testimony, Mr. Ball.
Thank you.
I have speaking for the bill, Katie Neeball. If you would state your name and who you represent for the record, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Katie Neebom. I am the Executive Director of the Arkansas Advanced Energy Association. I was with you all on February 14th when this bill was first presented for consideration, and I just wanted to reaffirm the Arkansas Advanced Energy Association's support for Senate Bill 145. I want to thank Senator Wallace for his commitment to bringing parties together to find a way to move forward to enable third-party leasing. I want to thank Chairman Thomas for his shepherding as well. And we talked about it a few weeks ago, but third-party leasing is going to open doors. It's going to create jobs, generate economic development in communities across the state. And just last week, the University of Arkansas Little Rock Bowen School of Law released an analysis that opening the doors of leasing, we could see a 2 to 3 time-fold increase in the number of solar jobs in Arkansas. And our members, entrepreneurs, are investing in communities across the state. They're investing in these good-paying jobs, and we think there's going to be a lot of opportunity. And importantly, as previous folks have talked about, non-tax entities, schools, churches, cities, and counties currently can't take advantage of the federal incentives, and this bill allows them to have capital come up off the sidelines and investing in local communities. So again, we thank Senator Wallace, Chairman Thomas for their leadership, and happy to answer any questions.
Senator T, you're recognized for questions, sir.
Thank you, sir. Is this a bill, as good a bill today as it was the first time you talked to us?
You know, as I said on February 14th, not every solar company is cheering every specific provision. But in legislative process, you can't let the perfect
really
be the enemy.
Yes, no answer.
Be the enemy of the good. Again, we are supportive of Senate Bill 145. We didn't start off on this path, but we are here and we are supportive.
So I personally don't like it near as well as I did when it was first new. I just thought you might help me on that, but thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Members, any other questions for Ms. Neeball? Thank you for coming. Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else that would like to speak for or against the bill? Seeing none, Senator Wallace, would you like to close for your bill?
Mr. Chairman, you recall I was late, I apologize, but I do have a few questions for Mr. Wallace or somebody, if we can do that. If we can't, it's okay.
I'd be happy to do that, and look, don't mean to be too blunt, but if you've got devices in here and you can't keep them from speaking out loud, please find a way to just turn your volume down completely, and you won't have to worry about them suddenly speaking to us. All right, go ahead.
And Mr. Chairman, we're ready to answer the questions of Senator Teague.
Senator Teague, you recognize, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ted, did you take the rate making back out of this? I mean, your first amendment made it a rate making bill instead of a solar bill, in my opinion. Have you taken that out?
It is still in there.
Where is it?
Back in the day, I didn't need these.
You're a lot older than me, I'm sure.
It's in the it's sprinkled throughout. It's in the definitions.
Just point to one place. Well, I'll ask another question. I didn't mean to ask a hard one. So, why do we say that rates will be determined by a commission and not the PSC? Why do we not say PSC? I'm specifically on page 2, line 21, and it's in more than one place in there. But we no longer say PSC, we just say by a commission. I don't trust that, because you can decide to create some other commission and give them the authority. I don't trust that.
If you look on page 1 at the very bottom,
Right?
commission means the Arkansas Public Service Commission. It was clumsy to have it in there sometimes, so we put commission there
Yeah.
and then define that.
Nothing personal, but I just don't trust when it doesn't say that. And on down to line 26, we scratch out, still on page 2, we scratch out billing and say determined by commission on, I guess when that is applied to the bill.
What we're trying, that's one of the rate making sections. What we're trying to do there is the people are fighting about what period should be. Should you accumulate it over the month, or should you do it instantaneously? And the reason billing was took out is so it didn't limit us to one option or the other, but gave us both. And the other language in that section, the old law requires that you trade a kilowatt hour for a kilowatt hour. What the other language in that section does is gives the PSC the flexibility to convert a kilowatt hour into a value, and then net value versus value, because closer to peak, solar energy is worth more.
So that's why you're multiplying by the applicable rate, is that why?
Yes.
Okay.
But that's an optional thing too. Some folks had some concerns. There might be tax consequences. The Federal Commission has jurisdiction over sale for resale, and so we don't want to hit one of those snags or unintended deals. We want the flexibility to be able to move around the potential snag.
So if we go to page 3 then, start with 17, where we change it from 300 kilowatts to a megawatt, I think. And then we say, other than for residential use.
Yes. That is a very large limit. Nobody has a house that's that large.
Well, what difference does it make then? I mean, what difference does it make if there's not a house that big? Why can't did we leave it in there? So you're going to limit houses to what?
Well, the
Residential to what? You're going
a
to
big
limit
box store like Walmart is about 1 kW. So if you had a house the size of a Walmart store,
I heard the PSD chairman did.
You were wrong on that one.
But I just don't see why you changed it. What difference did it make if there wasn't a house that big?
I'm not sure specifically why, but during the course of negotiations, that was
Somebody's
in
got
there.
some plan to beat residential people out of money, you think?
No,
Okay, I'm almost done, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. But on page 4, start with line 6, B and C. Can you just tell me what those do? And what is a market mechanism?
the market mechanism is at the RTO, which is SPP and MISO that you've probably toured. They have a very complex market system. They're trying to add to it what solar folks would say the grid benefits of having solar, which is really difficult to measure. They're trying to develop a real-time market for what we call ancillary services. And if they develop that market in the future, this makes for a way for the solar folks to get the benefit of that market value that's established in the market by the RTO.
Super T, you got anything else?
Yes, sir. I'm close, but I read this twice last night, and twice I didn't understand what I was reading, because Ted's been messing with it. Aisle 5 now, page 5 now. So, for net metering customers who receive service under a rate that does not include a demand component. Demand component are those people who have demand meters and pay some fixed rate or something based on.
Yes.
And so you're going to treat people who don't have that differently.
Yes, because that is the core measure of the cost shift. So if you have a demand charge already, there's a less risk of a cost shift than if you don't have a demand charge.
And the utility can decide whether they use this 1 meter or 1 meter going each way. I didn't understand the separately metered electric energy measured.
That there on 1617, that is the language that provides the PSC with the option of using the utilities preferred two-channel billing method. That's a description of the two-channel billing.
So you want 2 meters, one for each direction?
Yes. And
I thought it just spun the meter backwards.
it does under the classic net metering.
Okay. So avoiding cost is the thing that we talk about a lot, and I don't know that I understand it, but avoiding cost is if they buy it back, they don't have to pay a wholesaler or something for it.
Avoided cost is essentially where you could buy it from somewhere else at any given time.
Mr. Chairman? Thank you, sir. You're good.
Members, do you have any other questions before we allow Senator Wallace? I've got, is there 2 hands there or just one? Senator Elliott?
Just one.
Go ahead.
I just, somebody else is on.
All right.
I just wanted to clarify this a bit about commission, because some of the, throughout the bill, I mean, there are some references to a commission. Some of it's new language and some's not. And then at least one place I know it says the commission, and this might seem small, but for example, on page 2, line 27, where it says determined by a commission, and then on page 5, line 22, it says apply the commission approved. So, and I'm good with the commission, although it seems like it should be capitalized so we know we're talking about the PSC. But if it's a commission, this is a good lesson, the difference between A and D. So what do we mean by a commission as opposed to the commission?
I am not sure, Senator.
Okay.
I need to flatten that out.
Okay. Because if it's the A commission, that could be just anybody, anywhere. And I'd also, if we're going to fix it, if we're definitely referring to the PSC commission, capitalizing it would really help a great deal. As in, when you say mom and dad, you capitalize it just like you do their names. And so that was all I had, Mr. Chair. I want to be sure that's clarified.
I'm glad she did that, not me. But actually, I do see the point. I didn't know, I was trying to quickly go through to see how many different instances there were. I didn't get through the bill to stay in tune with the conversation. So if you acknowledge that, I mean, it's, unless somebody proves it's different, I really think it probably needs to say the commission when it's referring to you. And so I don't know if there's what you want to do on that, or if the senator's suggesting that we hold back for that reason. You worked so hard on this thing to get it clean, that one is just kind of slipped by, I think. But I honestly believe it probably would be cleaner if it said the commission. It's what it sounds like, unless you've got somebody here that was a drafter that wants to speak to this with BLR, which would be happy for them to. I mean, at this point, with all that's been done on the bill, if it's a matter of just that issue, I think the committee's in the posture that we would be happy to try to entertain an amendment, suspend our rules and allow it, because it's a very small technical thing, but it is a big issue for a couple folks here. And it might be a big issue if somebody begins to try to litigate the thing. So I'm just throwing that out on the table for you, and I'm going to recognize Senator Ervin for a question.
Musical chairs, musical microphones. No, I think that it is a big deal, I think, just because of the way it's written. And it needs to be, because it's multiple places. Like on page 5, you've got it on line 29 and 22, they're different. But because you don't want that to be questioned. You know what I mean? I think that's
Yes, I agree with that.
So
I
don't think it changes what you're trying to do here, and I think I'm glad that the work has been done. We're not trying to kill your bill because of this, or I'm not at least, but I just think that it really does need to be addressed. But my real question is really just about process here. So after this bill is passed, then what is the process with the PSC? Because I want to make sure that even though you have inserted yourself and we've requested you, Mr. Thomas, to insert yourself into the bill drafting and bill making and policy making process, I do want to make sure that we have, you know, that there's a fair process in determining all this. Does that make sense? And
Yes.
Can you give me some level of comfort in knowing that it's going to be a fair process when this happens at the PSC? Can you talk to me about that?
Much of, currently, we have a dispute under current law. We have a draft opinion that is not finished, that's 300 pages long. It's very difficult to complete because both sides are saying, as a matter of law, they win. The statute requires that they win. Normally when we do rate making, it's more flexible than that, and we're balancing various interests. What this bill does is leaves the options on the table that both sides are pushing for, but doesn't lock the PSC into either one of those. So we have the flexibility to do our normal rate making thing within the confines of the argument that they're already having. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just want to make sure you can give me the assurance that both sides will have their equal
Yes.
day at the PSC,
Yes.
so that we're not,
What we'll do is restart. We have thousands of pages. We will do a reset under the new law, and we will include all the evidence that they've already has been submitted in the new proceeding, so there's no confusion about what is in or out. and then they'll have opportunity to make new arguments under the new law, and then we will resolve the dispute.
And what's the time frame on that?
I hope by the end of the year.
Okay, I was just making sure, because I want to make sure that both sides have their day to be able to argue their points, because I think although there's a resolution on the way this bill is drafted and the way that the policy is being created, you know, there's still, I just don't want there to be any bias one way or the other when it comes before the PSC.
I don't think there will be.
I just needed to make sure. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a good question. I would want to ask you now, do you want to try to clean that language up?
I've got the issue,
Okay.
thanks to Mr. Moody. And I remember
Who's Mr. Moody?
He's helping. The reason it's A and D is because if a municipality chooses, as they're permitted under the bill, to do their own thing, it makes the language applicable either to the municipality that's choosing to exercise the jurisdiction or to the PSC. That's what the purpose of that is.
Okay. That's plausible. Before we move to a different question, Senator Elliott.
Yeah, I understand it's plausible, but when you define commission, you capitalize it, and when in the bill, and I don't remember, when you're referring then specifically to the PSC commission, is that capitalized or not capitalized? And then if it's not, how do you know if you're talking about which commission you're talking
Senator,
about?
I will say to you, like when you go to page 8, line 33, it actually spells out Arkansas Public Service Commission there again in the bill. So, and it, you know, it actually states the full name, capitalizes it, so that, I mean, I'm picking up on the style differences that they're talking about now, but definitely, and I apologize, but when you said Mr. Moody,
Yes.
and for the people who don't know who, everyone here does not know who he is, so if you'd please at least introduce who he is that's invoking this.
Mr. Moody has worked with the solar group here, and he is represents the Audubon Association.
Okay.
And I remember that being in there and not resolving it and remembering that it wasn't that big, but I couldn't remember why. Now that doesn't mean there's not instances in here where that should be resolved, and then I'm not enough of a word nerd to know for sure whether the should be capitalized or small case throughout.
Well, I guess the thing I'm struggling with is not, I know this is probably getting on people's nerves, but as a person who's reading the bill, if it just says a commission, I don't even know that you're talking about a municipal commission, for example. I don't even know that part. Is that in here somewhere? And because if we're talking about municipal commission, and then we just say a commission someplace else, it seems like there needs to be some clarity rather than just saying a commission somewhere.
I'm going to stop just a minute, Senator Elliott, because what it says on line 1, page 1, line 36, it says commission means the Arkansas Public Commission, turn to 2, or other appropriate governing body for electric utility as defined in subdivision 3 of this section. It does spell out who it is. It does. It's just that it wasn't on that one line.
Okay, all right.
Okay? I feel we're getting closer now. Members, any other questions? Senator Teague has one.
Mr. Chairman, Ted, the last time we were here, I asked you if grandmother was on this. There's been a utility employee or two to indicate to me that grandmother loses the way it's written now. What's your thought? And again, I don't like the way it's written now. What's your thought on grandmother's position?
My thought is that grandmother wins because there's language in here that prohibits cost shifts. And her grandchildren also win because we're embracing new technology when the price gets right. And the cost shift language is in here throughout.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Members, any further questions? And we're ready then. I just want to make sure my members don't have any other questions over here. It doesn't sound like so. Senator Wallace, would you like to say anything to close the bill, sir?
I would, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over and over, when I went through this drill, every agency, municipalities, co-op, solar, the big public utilities, all told me the man that they trusted, the individual they trusted, was Director Ted Thomas, bar none. No group came in and said, we don't trust him. They're very comfortable with what he's done. Throughout this event, Director Thomas has drawn both groups side to side. Now, the one-page bill was a good bill. However, it was a bridge too far. And it, in my opinion, would not have passed. It might have passed this committee, but it would not have passed on the floor of the Senate. And it's very easy for individuals to stand and be that voice in the wilderness and say, no, no, no. And at the end of the day, the bill doesn't get passed, and the Arkansas consumer is a person that loses if we don't pass this bill. This is a good bill. It is a good bill for the Arkansas consumer. And sir, with that, I close.
All right. Members, you've heard a presentation of the bill, all the testimony. Do I have a motion? I have a motion to pass from Senator Johnson. Do I have a second? I have 2 seconds. I will take Senator Bledsoe was first. Is there any discussion on the motion? Members, I will say on this that throughout this process, I have come to the point where I have no one else complaining to me. And I mean, and the issue is not everybody got everything they wanted. And I do want to second what Senator Wallace is saying. I do think it's important to say that, frankly, I don't think you would have gotten anywhere near this had not many of the parties asked that Ted be involved. They felt that he was able to do that in a way that's fair. And I have not seen him at any time since he's been our director to tip the scales one direction or the other. He has tremendous respect, and I just believe it's important to say that right now. And also to say that I will say for my own part, without specifying any particular entity, there's one entity I'm very unhappy with some things that have nothing to do with this particular bill. And that issue I'm overlooking that because I do think that it's good policy that we need to move forward. And so with that being said, I just wanted to tell the members, all of us may have someone we've talked to and we feel a little bit in pain one way or another. It's tough. And I'm telling you, I feel the same way. But I feel like over time here, we realize that usually some of the best policy is when not everybody involved doesn't get every single thing they want, but we get something that can move us forward. With that, I do appreciate the work. You all have asked excellent questions. Senator Teague did a great job with that today as well. I appreciate the effort that's gone in, and I feel like we're in a position we can move forward. Any other discussion? Senator Elliott.
Mrs. Chair, I have one thing I want to echo your comments, but I also do just want to point out that, I mean, probably, maybe not everybody has those squishiness. I have squishiness, but I know I'm going to vote. I think this is probably a good demonstration of how hard it is to get policies in place sometimes when things are really tough. And for me, it is one of those things that underlines my concern, and I'm just taking advantage of this, of being in such a hurry to meet a date or a deadline for all the policies that we are considering up here. And I just hope going forward, we think more carefully back to this example of how people worked and worked and worked all the time it has taken. And there are bills right now being considered that probably need the same kind of time, but we are up here setting some arbitrary deadline rather than giving all bills this kind of consideration when we need to. So I just want to take advantage of that opportunity. Thank you.
I agree with that, Senator Irwin.
Yeah, and I'd also say, although I appreciate the attorney that chimed in, I think it's important that we have a non-biased, you know, I mean, I think there's obviously a clear bias one way or the other about how something's written. So I just, again, I just want to say that needs to be taken into consideration. You know, obviously the Audubon Society has a very specific interest in this bill. I have a level of comfort. I'm not trying to be disrespectful or rude. I'm just saying there needs to be a non-biased look at the language and the way it's written, because it's very confusing. I mean, it really is, because it's the way it's referred to utilities and commissions and all of that. It's very, very confusing. So I just wouldn't want us to have unintended consequences because of that. Does that make sense? So that's just my only hesitation, but I do agree with Senator Elliott, and I do appreciate the work that's been done on the bill. Thank you.
All right, members, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Motion passes. Senator Wallace, congratulations to you, sir.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, members, I do not